For Crema Media's Polity, I'm Sane Dlamini. James Brandstein joins me to discuss his new book, Blackout, the Eskom Crisis. Welcome, James.
Thank you. Thanks, Sanele, for having me.
Thanks for bringing up this subject, because a lot of South Africans are very worried about electricity, if we will really have a blackout or what. So if I may start with the questions, the book informs us of a series of warnings that government received, and they ignored the warnings. What can you say about that?
I mean, it's very concerning, obviously, given that one of the most serious warnings was in a government policy document that was confirmed, signed off by cabinet, by parliament. It became a white policy paper in 1998, where in that document, the minister at the time, Penuel Maduna, said, look, we're going to run out of electricity by 2007. We need to build new baseload electricity. Generally, that's what they said. And nothing was done. And then 2007, November, we hit load shedding for the first time. And since then, I think we've literally been building a house while it's raining, trying to put the roof on. And it's a problem. It's a problem because, in my opinion, I think there are some more warning signs that I raise in the book. Warning signs, I think, that are there for anybody trying to look and see them. And these warning signs should be heeded and not ignored.
And Eskom recently, we've seen a lot of changes in the boardroom and the top executive people coming and going. Do you think this has had an impact at Eskom?
Yes, absolutely. So there's four really important jobs in electricity in South Africa, in my opinion. The two ministers, Department of Energy and Public Enterprises, and then your chairman of Eskom and your CEO at Eskom. Those are four critical positions for electricity. So in the past 7 years, you've had 21 different people in those four jobs. You've had 9 different ministers, you've had 7 different CEOs and acting CEOs at Eskom, and 5 different chairmen. So you cannot, in my opinion, plan. You can't implement a plan. You can't make sure the plan is kept up to date. You can't hold people accountable because they come and go. So the coming and going of people in key positions is a very big part of the reason why I think we are in some trouble when it comes to electricity.
Experts in the field have said we could have electricity without blackouts within a short time if government abandons the monopoly and allowed competition. Do you agree?
So what we need to see is some more independent players coming in, building big power stations of 1,000 megawatts and more, because this is what we really need. So we do see a lot of smaller independent guys coming and building 5 megawatts, 20 megawatts, maybe even 100 megawatts. The problem is in getting an independent guy or more coming and building really big baseload electricity that is completely reliable. And at this stage, Eskom is still the only player in that field. And that means Eskom being a monopoly, it means they're basically the only player in that market. And this is a challenge.
And is the non-payment for the electricity also a major issue? And how do you think government should address this?
I do think it is an issue because Eskom needs money. It needs money to keep funding its programs. It needs money to keep the lights on, essentially. And by seeing the levels of non-payment that we are seeing, it's extremely concerning. It's indicative of a number of things, of course. It could also be indicative of people not having jobs and not being able to simply afford to pay. But I think in a larger part, it's indicative of lack of political will, perhaps, to really act against communities that are not paying, but perhaps even can afford to pay. And so what should government do about it? I believe there should be stricter policy implemented. They should, if people do not pay, they should be cut off. It sounds very harsh, but I think that it's like it's like a circle. So if we don't cut them off, Eskom will have to keep supplying electricity to people not paying. That pool just keeps expanding. We need to make sure Eskom has the money to keep going with their programs. Otherwise, there might very well be no electricity for anybody.
And you also shared with us the interview we had with the former CEO of Eskom, Mr. Ian McRae. To what extent does he ascribe to the crisis, and what were his proposed solutions?
So it is in the book. He had some solutions. I think he had a list of 7, and he believed that some of the big problems included a lack of proper leadership in the industry, the continued flux, as we've spoken about. Another one is the fact that Eskom is such a big player, and the regulator, the energy regulator, NERSA, perhaps doesn't have strong enough teeth to really act against Eskom, which is really a giant in the room. So it can, in a sense, really still manipulate the market to a large extent, given that Eskom also owns the transmission grid. So if you do go and build a power plant anywhere, it's a very still a risky proposition as a business, because you're not entirely sure whether you're going to have access to the customers, because you would need Eskom's grids. So in that sense, Dr. McRae mentioned that we do need to see some parts of Eskom perhaps taken out of the business and put into separate structures. Those were some of the issues that he highlighted.
And in the NERSA sittings in 1998, if I'm not mistaken, Solidarity came up with an issue which they said was a major factor of that. At Eskom, they have done away with skilled people because they wanted to balance the racial thing, and then in that process they lost a lot of skilled people. Do you think Eskom is in trouble because of that?
It's a very difficult question to say. I think that this was another warning. We've spoken earlier about warnings, and Solidarity represents shall we say, skilled workers at Eskom.
Yes.
And the warnings that they raised, it wasn't in 98, it was a bit later, I think, if I remember correctly, 2004, 2008.
Yes.
And they were saying that the problem is that a lot of the skilled workers who've been at Eskom perhaps a long time are leaving, and a lot of others are resigning or retiring, reaching certain ages. And Solidarity raised the issue that there was a concern about, is there enough skilled workers coming through? Do I think it's an issue? I think in the book as well, the Minister of Public Enterprises, Lynn Brown, thinks it's an issue. So she mentions in a recent answer in Parliament that there's currently about 3,500 vacant positions in skilled posts at Eskom. So what those exact posts are, I'm not sure, but that to me is concerning. Whether that has led to where we are at the moment, I think it's a bit unclear to really say yes or no. But whether it could become a bigger problem going to the future, given the kind of challenges we've got, I think it could. If we don't fill those skilled posts with the necessarily skilled people, we could run into some more challenges.
And if I may ask, what were you hoping to achieve with the book?
I'm hoping to perhaps create some awareness. The bottom line is, if we do not grow this economy in this country, every little thing we want to do, we hope to achieve, getting people out of poverty, bringing down inequality, everything we want to do, improve people's lives, it's gonna fail if we don't grow, giving people jobs. We're sitting with some of the highest unemployment in the world. It's horrendous. And economic growth, which we're currently seeing of 1.5%, is nothing. You can do nothing with that. We cannot grow this country. And it's as if there's this sense of relief that there's no load shedding. I think it's a nightmare, because it simply means the economy is not growing. We should be load shed at this stage, simply given to the problems we've had with capacity. We are not. And I'm hoping that Eskom is using the downtime to do the maintenance necessary. It all comes back to growing the economy, to me, and that's what the book's about, to raise awareness perhaps, and try and get people to understand, listen, there are challenges. We must hurry up. We must build capacity. If there's capacity, we can attract people to come and build facilities here, smelters, factories, and we can give people jobs. But we can't do it with the current the situation we've got in the electricity industry.
And do you think that the nuclear energy should be part of South Africa's future energy mix?
I do think so. I'm a proponent of all the technologies. I'm pro all the different technologies. Renewable power, I'm a big fan, big supporter. Nuclear, I'm a big fan and a big supporter. even coal, I think it still has a future in South Africa simply because it's a very cheap form of generating electricity because we've got such a lot of coal and it's relatively easily accessible. So coal must still form a part of our mix. So the issue, and gas is the other big player which we don't have. We don't use a lot of gas at all, but it's going to be an increasingly important part of generating electricity in South Africa. So the catch is, to what extent, what should the mix be? So finding the best mix for our economy. So saying we need 10% of nuclear, we need 30% of renewables, we need 40% of coal. That kind of mix is what government should be telling us now. They should be drawing up policy and saying, this is what we should do, this is when we should do it, this is how much of it we should do. And then they should stick to that plan. So to me, nuclear is there's a couple of reasons, and I go into them in the book. Just one of the ones that I think is very, very important, and stuff that Engineering News has been covering quite a bit, and to their credit, regards fresh water. And just this little picture, Medupi, will be using, Medupi is a coal-fired power station. It has 6 units. 1 unit of Medupi will need 7.8 million litres of fresh water per day. The amount of stress on our fresh water resources, I think, going into future is something the country simply cannot afford. We must look after our water resources, and that brings me back to nuclear, which is a plant you can build at the coast. You can use cold seawater and you don't need fresh water. It's as simple as that.
Wow, what an insight. Thank you very much, James, for your time.
Absolutely.
Thanks. That was author James Bernstein speaking to Creamer Media's Polity about his new book, Blackout, the Eskom Crisis.